Hello there. This is going to be a tough act to follow, but my name is Stephen Magenheim, and today I'm going to be talking to you about 4 frames, my guide to a successful elementary math class. Now I want to take a quick second to point to a key word here, which is my. This is my guide to an elementary classroom, to an elementary math class. I took this opportunity with teacher research to kind of synthesize and reflect on all the information that I will be getting over the year, and kind of seeing what works along with my learning style and also my students' learning style to fit and best teach math. And being the very intuitive self I am, I kind of put it into 4 very neat boxes. So the overview of my placement. So I was at Horace Mann Elementary School in Newton. There were 21 students, 11 boys and 10 girls. I had 4 English language learners and 5 students on an IEP. And Newton this year, for 3rd and 4th grade, just introduced a brand new math curriculum, Pearson's Investigation. And so I was fortunate enough to work with a team of everyone having over 20 years of educational experience to kind of sit down and figure out how we were going to best present this new curriculum to our 3rd and 4th grade students. So as we began looking at this new curriculum, we saw some big glaring dilemmas with the way that math is being taught. First was that there was a lack of enthusiasm or efficacy in math class. Students were not excited for math, because overall, it's boring. Second, the curriculum gave very little interest or intrigue. There was no opportunity for excitement or just a lot of collaborative learning. It was very, learn this, do it in your workbook. That just doesn't work for me. Also, because it was a new curriculum, there was little support for teachers to give time to students that are still developing the math skills, especially when still trying to interpret what's happening next in the curriculum and figure out everything else going on, that we felt that the developing students were being missed out. And a few others. One big one for me was a need for challenge opportunities. I saw a lot of those high-level students kind of plateauing, and I thought that there was more opportunity to push them. So with the team, I developed a research question. What strategies and routines could be implemented to differentiate an elementary math student for both high-level and developing students and increase efficacy? Make math fun. That was going to be my title until someone else started. So, to conduct my research, I first thought about examining my own positionality. This is my own learning style and the way that I will develop the lessons. Then, I will collect information from scholarly sources and talking to many of the impressive colleagues and mentors that I've had. Then I will organize my information into research points. Then I, in my takeover time, will experiment with different strategies and see what works for me, and analyze the data to achieve my guide to a successful math classroom. So first, looking at myself. I'm extroverted. No. I love hands-on learning. I love touching and manipulating, and really that's how I process information. And I love collaborative group time. So what that means, when I design lessons, I didn't provide time for introverts, I didn't provide silent processing time, and I need to keep in consideration other learning styles. So, going forward with my research, here are my 4 neat boxes. So the first one is about creating expectations, developing routines, providing the opportunity to take risks, and fostering inquiry, which here at Brandeis is a huge part of the education program. So first, creating expectations. These were the 4 expectations that we created in our 3rd grade class. They were try our best, take care of ourselves and each other, listen and follow directions, and take care of materials and our school. These were student-created and student-focused in 3rd grade language, which I think is really important. And our classroom was a responsive classroom, so we did a lot of work with Paula Denton and All on Teacher Language. And one of the most important aspects with these expectations is using her language to kind of envision and model the way that you want your classroom to run. These are guidelines, but the way that the teacher acts and the teacher talks and behaves is the way that the students can then foster their learning to create an effective class. So next was to develop routines. The reason a lot of students were nervous for math class is because they didn't know what they were expecting. And as a team, we sat down and thought, how can we break up each lesson to really make sure that when you enter math, you know exactly what you're getting. So we started with a 10-minute activator. These were usually a fun game or some sort of introduction experience to kind of get students ready for math. Then we had our mini lesson, the main meat of the subject, and we tried to keep it under 10 minutes. Because you try and keep a third grader's attention for more than 10 minutes. Next, we did some modeling behavior. Within the responsive classroom model, we talk a lot about the gradual release of responsibility. So this is I do as the teacher. I'm going to show you what we're doing. Now we're going to do it in shoulder partners, and now you're going to break off and do it yourself. So then, because students had this model, this was the time during the collaborative work time where the teacher could go around and provide the assistance to a lot of the students that needed more help and kind of engage in conversation and push the students a little further. Once they were finished, there was a challenge or extension problem, usually on a 5th or 6th grade level, just to really kick those high students into gear. Lastly, my least favorite time, was the independent work time. Just some silence, processing time to either finish some of the group work, do some work problems, or just kind of continue working on the extension problem, just giving that time for it to really sink in. And lastly, we did a wrap-up or a brief check-in, and I usually did a fist to 5, my favorite, where students very close to their chest give, I ask some sort of question, I say, how do you feel this math lesson went? Fist to 5, so 5 being really well, 0, not so well. And what's important about this is it's very just between me and the student, and it's very quick. And then this helps improve the changes. So next, provide opportunities to take risks. This is where I really honed in with my data collection and really tried to get important feedback. So these were the 4 types of collaborative group assignments that we gave. They were expert groups, around the room, math stations, and student presentations. Expert groups was each student takes the time to learn a different strategy or a different math routine, and then they have to teach it to the group. Around the room, we set up problems in kind of a sequential order, and students could go by themselves with a partner, and they had to figure out and solve each of the problems around the room. And it kind of created a flow or moving more than just working in your workbook. Math stations, where we have different manipulatives and each kind of different learning style set up in a station. Students can choose where they want to go, and they have to work in that station to solve or work on the problems. And lastly, student presentations. This was, we gave a problem to a group, the students had to solve the problem, and they had to get up in front of the room and present the problems. So, for the data, I asked them which one was their favorite, and which one you think they learned the most. And I think this data is fascinating. Because, as you can see, expert groups, a lot of students said that they learned the most, because it was challenging. It's hard to learn something and really becoming an expert and then teaching your students. Also, side note, this could also be done in partnerships or collaborative learning. But as you can see, not a lot of students liked it. While on the opposite, math stations, a lot of students loved it, but I think it's very interesting that they were able to say that it wasn't very productive. And I think that that's very key, that they were aware of that thing in our classroom, and I think that goes back to the idea of the expectations that we created in the very beginning. And lastly, the presentations. They were hard. Good for this one student. So next, fostering inquiry. As someone that just accomplished their student teaching and is about to move to DC to teach 4th grade at a Jewish day school, I'm still wrapping my head around the fact of how to foster inquiry, and I think this is where I'm going to focus a lot of my research and learning the next few years. So inquiry is that opportunity for students. It's an open-ended question, and students just delve in and kind of create solutions to real-world problems. And it's what we do every day. And I think providing this information and providing this opportunity is really important in fostering a strong learning with these students. So my takeaways, or my 4 frames again, just to reiterate, is to create expectations, develop routines, provide an opportunity to take risks, and foster inquiry. So moving forward, I think my next step is how do I measure efficacy and track students' growth within the structure of differentiated math lessons? A lot of my time was spent in the planning and routines side of this research, and I think it's really important to collect data and have some sort of working path of where to go next. And I think finding some ways to make sure that students are getting what they want out of the class in a more interactive way.
So on the graph of the student survey, thank you. So this was just asking students to pick their favorite one, right?
Yes. So we did each of these twice within a period of a month. And each time I was like, I very explicitly was like, we're testing out these strategies, try and remember how it goes, how you work during these opportunities. And these were very open-ended questions. I didn't